Ironic that the hoopla about Hezbollah, uh, no pun intended, is just so. Oh my God, uh, Israel will be overwhelmed. Their Iron Dome, if Lebanon fires all its rockets, blah blah blah. And yeah, I totally agree, but that's not the point, is it? Netanyahu had his Pearl Harbor, and he wants it again. They knew that Hamas, on the 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur, invaded Israel. Okay? They knew it was going to happen. You know? Now, everybody can say, oh, fog of war. Bullshit. This was Netanyahu's dream. It's his dream war, and his right-wing supporters that propped him up, because otherwise he wouldn't get that coalition, were just chomping at the bit for this too. And if Netanyahu was so incompetent, I'm sure his ministers were suppressing this information to him. But I think they're all in cahoots, because Netanyahu represents the Israeli people. He is representative of the mindset of the average Israeli, of the vast 95 plus percent majority. It's just overwhelming. Those brave Israeli protesters are in the distinct minority. Anyways, so this, oh my God, it's going to overwhelm them. Well, that's exactly what Netanyahu would like, wouldn't it? He goes to war, Israel gets hit hard, more deaths occur, probably in the thousands, probably 1,000, probably less than 1,000 when they do the math. And that's his, I mean, they got licensed to, right? So if Israel can provoke an attack, it's not like Netanyahu or his family are in danger, or any of the other guys. This is just, that's what I think. It's obviously, I mean, we are getting close to it, so obviously this is gonna be. And the thing is that the U.S. is no stranger. This is not their first rodeo into Lebanon. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. The battleships of the U.S. were pounding the hills of Lebanon during the right. So it's just nuts. Yeah, just crazy. Yeah, and speaking of, there was
which feels neglected.
This guy was talking, and it's a clickbait. Totally, it's total bullshit. He lays out a lot of evidence, an itinerary list of evidence to show the 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 alliance, right? But he doesn't. That's it. That's all he does. He doesn't. He just mentions at the very end, oh, it's the greatest threat to Jewish people, and it's like, wait, is there a two-parter to this? You just teased us here. Obviously, I've heard all this stuff before, some which I haven't, and thank you so much, but you just clickbaited us with, yeah, you're going to make an opinion, but you didn't. You're just cowardly. So that was annoying. Well, in the sense of, hey, why did you just clickbait us? But I wish he would talk about what he thought would happen, what dangerous road Israel is going down by being lockstep with Europe's fascists, right? And supporting them. And getting, support from these fascists. So I'm just kind of worried about this whole. This is going, like, I think it's very bizarre. It's like, why would you not focus all your attention on talking about the threat to Jews everywhere because of real anti-Semitism, and not just, criticisms of. And that's the problem, because it's like the US is the influence on the Middle East, not Israel. Israel is not influencing the U.S. The U.S. administration is playing footsie with the brazenness. Ever since the beginning, Israel has been a mad dog on a short leash, and that leash is the U.S. So the mad dog is going to snap at its owner too, but it's a short leash. And they can do all they want to act crazy, and it's a deterrence, except that deterrence was ruined when Israel's invincibility was disrupted. But again, Netanyahu doesn't care. He wants to save his own ass. So he doesn't care if the credibility of the deterrence of the elite IDF is tarnished. He doesn't care. It's political opportunism for him. And likewise, the alliance with the Europe fascists. But if this guy isn't willing to, why don't I? It's like, what? This isn't an opportunity for you to put your thoughts down about what you think is going to happen. Oh, so what if you're freaking wrong? Oh, poor baby. It's like, make a speculation, and then based on what actually happens, analyze the difference between what you expected, what actually happened, and reading between the lines and analyzing it. But if you don't make that guess, how can you learn anything about yourself or the world, or modify, or bring depth to your analysis if you don't guess, if you don't analyze, if you don't speculate, right? And this guy just played it safe. It was just so annoying. Anyway, so let's go where he dared not to. The scary support that the alt-right, ultra-fascist, Judeo-Marxist conspiracy, right, is focused so heavily on blaming the Jews for controlling the capitalist world and using Bolshevism to destabilize it so they can gain control of it. That is so still in existence. But what weirds me out is that it's almost as if these people are giving rope to Israel so they can lynch them eventually. Just all the rope they want. Here you go. Here's the rope they'll lynch you with. And all Jews. Because imagine if the U.S. finally says enough. That's when the fascists are going to pounce. And it's so dangerous. And anyway, so my video is done. I'm going to go back to doing other stuff, but there is going to be a point. And when is that point going to be? Like, this guy doesn't even go there. It's like, when is that point going to be? I think when the U.S. finally gives up, because they gave up on Indonesia when the heat got too much. Clinton was like, that's it, and they packed off out of East Timor, and so it's going to be eventually whoever, like, Trump is not going to get in, but if he does, he's going to give Israel everything he wants. But if he doesn't get in and Biden gets a second term, they will play footsie, but the heat will be so much, and I believe Biden will lose so many votes. If it's going to be razor thin, and there's a large, people are going to refuse to vote on this, and Trump might get in and give he moved the frickin' embassy to Jerusalem, for Christ's sake, and gave them Golan Heights, and and he's going to give Putin everything he wants, right? So the thing is that once Biden gets in a second time, I'm pretty sure that the ire felt by himself from the entire world I mean, that he's an old man. Does he change his opinion? It's hard to teach old dogs new tricks, but it's like Reagan became no nuke Reagan to get reelected, and he went with the people. Will Biden go with the people? You know, because there's the schools coming up, like a next generation or next year, a next crop of school students will be in universities during the election, right? So he's got to do something. So I think he'll promise. I think it's, if Trump gets in, it's a winning opportunity for both Putin and Netanyahu. But if Trump does not get in, and the protests are massive, like, could you believe it? It would be a year of just, like, it's been 6 months, 30,000. It's going to be 60,000. I can guarantee you 60,000, but there's 2 million of them in Gaza. 60,000 deaths probably by that time. It's going to be outrageous, you know? It's probably 6,000 kids at least have been killed by then. So the drumbeat of constant, this is still in the news, why isn't it shutting up, why hasn't the Western media been able to distract the population with bread and circuses? It's going to be, stop it, and Israel will just pack up, and it'll be a two-state, and then the fascists will pounce, right? Then it will be like, how do you frame it? Like, how do you go about framing it as, because if Biden gives in to public opinion and tells them to stop, and Israel just does an about face, that will mean they're not in control, right? So, yeah, this is what surprises me. It's like, yeah, maybe the alt-right knows this, that if Biden or a liberal actually cracks down, or even Trump, you know, which I doubt, but say a Democrat in the U.S. In the White House does the Sahartu thing to Benjamin Netanyahu, and he pulls out, all like, just done. One day it'll be just done, two-state done. If that happens, then the right doesn't have a leg to stand on about who's, you know, the tail wagging the dog. Will they use the tail wagging the dog anyways, or are they expecting Trump to get in, giving Netanyahu everything he wants, and that will enable, like, it all seems very, you know, under a rock, like the cockroaches are scuttling around under rocks and energizing their base, but not coming out and officially going after the Judeo-Bolshevik, and, you know, the trope, right? So will they, like, if Israel's alliance with Europe's fascist is the greatest threat to Jewish people, I don't think so. Like, thinking now, it's like there's two avenues that could go down. That this is just something that the fascists will use to rile up their base, to prove that the Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy is real and still current, and that Hitler was right, blah, 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 you know? Or there's going to be a tipping point. But I don't think, like, this guy thinks there's a tipping point, but how? Like, how is it going to be a tipping point? Like, where's the red line where the fascists finally come out in the open and start actually talking on mainstream about the Bolshevik Judeo conspiracy, and this is proof Hitler was right, blah, 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 blah. You know, where's that point? You know, I mean, I don't think it's the greatest threat to Jewish people. I think Europeans, fascists everywhere, are the greatest threat to Jewish people. And what is behind fascism? Corporations. Fascists are the shadow cast by big business. Butchering the quote of government is the shadow cast by big business, right? It's just these people want a threat to the system to scare people. They need a forever war. Just like Netanyahu is going after Hamas. They need something that, see, a minority, a religion, ethnic population, subpopulation is just simply an idea, right? And you can't defeat an idea, so that's a perfect way to say, hey, look, it's their fault, and it will always be their fault, right? You can't just get rid of right. So that's why the fascists pick something like the Jews, right? And that's why they've always picked the Jews, and that's why even before corporations, there was feudalism, and feudalism was the shadow cast by the kings and queens, right? I mean, who are the strongmen who are going to come up and suck up to the people in power, right? And there was anti-Semitism there, I'm sure. It's been a long-standing tradition for Christians to hate on the Jews, right? And I'm sure even before then, there's always a scapegoat, right? Anyways, so here we are. We go, all right, if it's a threat, explain why you think there's going to be a tip. Like, obviously the implication is there's going to be a tipping point where the fascists turn against Israel, right? But if they do, it's not going to be after Israel fails, right? Because a failing Israel is perfect for them. But I meant in the sense of Biden or his successor telling them to, like maybe Kamala Harris or who knows, telling, bringing up the short leash and going, enough. And that would be the fascist's worst nightmare, because that would prove that the Jews are not in control of the world, right? That Israel is being the Zionists. It's so difficult, right? Because the fascists don't separate the Zionist state, ethno-state that was created by Christian Zionists, right? Because they were totally anti-Semitic and wanted all the Jews to go to Israel. So it's just all this, So is it going to be a red line? Yes, it is the greatest threat if this Israel's alliance is the greatest threat. But how? I mean, let's play it out here. If Biden, let's just say Biden does it, because he's representing the Democrats. So if Biden pulls up, does the Sahartu on Israel, right? And suddenly Jews are not in control of the world and blah, blah, blah. How is Israel's alliance with Europe's fascists the greatest threat to Jewish people, right? And on the other hand, if Trump gets in and gives Israel everything it wants, and obviously it proves the fascist case, how is Israel's alliance with Europe's fascists the greatest threat to Jewish people, right? I mean, let's push it all the way. Let's go to the extreme. Okay, let's question that assumption. How? And this guy gave us nothing, right? So it's like, how is that? Like, obviously it's a marriage of convenience, politics, whatever. We all know it's fake, but why is it the greatest threat? I mean, you're blaming Israel for the plight of the Jewish people when the fascists have been around forever, right? So it's like, what what, and he didn't even talk about it. He just went, answer. And it's like, wait, you set us up with this great talk over 7 minutes and then just stopped. It's like, what the fuck, do you have anything else? Like David Hirsch, like, who is this guy, right? No, that's not. Who is the real threat to British? What? What? Who is? So he's like, who is the real threat to British Democrats? Blah blah blah. It's like, what? Why Israel faces a strategic defeat in Gaza? Oh my God! All right, it's only 6 minutes.
In the weeks following the Hamas attack on southern Israel in October last year, the Israeli army compiled a 20-minute video of the horrors caught on film that day from Hamas's own body cams and other footage. It was sent to select journalists and governments around the world to justify the response the army was planning. A much longer video could and should now be compiled of the war crimes Israeli troops have been committing, with the full knowledge and approval of their officers and the backing of most Israelis. The killing of Faisal Khalid's pregnant mother, shot in the corridor of the family home along with his father before his eyes. The summary execution of an old man with hearing and speech difficulties, which the soldier boasted to his unit about. All respect, one of them is heard to say. The Flower Massacre, when a tank unit opened fire on crowds rushing an aid convoy. The routine torture, executions, mock and real, of detainees. The soldiers are contemptuous of what the rest of the world thinks, but the world is watching. This war is forcing Israel's backers to see the full horror of the crimes committed in a campaign they called a just war just 5 months ago. The degree of brutality, the glee shown by the soldiers as they go about their day.
This is just porn. It's like the US is consciously, and has been for 75 years, supporting and being the lifeline of Israel. Without the US's support, there would be nothing. So it's like, these are not hosts or funders or people who might be horrified. These are people who want Israel to be the cop on the beat. And look at how the cops on the beat in the US treat the protesters. So it's like, all you're doing is masturbatory bullshit. It's like, what does, so you're saying you're giving evidence, but it's like the US doesn't give a shit. The US administration literally does not give a shit. So, and the funders don't give a shit. So it's, they're not going to come to Jesus. They're only going to come to Jesus when the popular protests happen, right? And this guy is like, oh, well, if we give them enough evidence, they'll change their minds. It's like, what the right? It's just, yeah, this guy is just, it's just like word porn. It's like, dude, you're not saying anything. Why Israeli faces their strategic defeat in Gaza? He will say, well, after all I just said, they will face a strategic defeat. And you're like, what the fuck, right? It's like, you did nothing but word porn. How's this got anything to do with a strategic defeat, right? It's just, yeah. This war could collapse Israel, but all you're gonna do is word porn, and then at the end he goes, and it's like, that's not, this is just, why are you clickbaiting? Like, why, you're editor-in-chief, why do you need to make a 6-minute frickin' video of word porn, right? It's just glorifying the US. You're just hagiography of the US with these short sound bites, and it's just, how the hell, like, who is, like, Middle East Eye? Did I accidentally start clicking on, like, to me, this seems, objective, but it's not. Oh my God. All right, so let's see if I'm wrong.
Killing the starving of Gaza, and then dropping leaflets in Arabic telling Gazans to feed the needy, killing of 400 people at the aid trucks, and then saying they will flood Gaza with aid. All this is too much to sweep under the carpet when this war stops. A Rubicon has been crossed. With this war, Israel has entered the elite rank of pariah states. It is now the ugliest of the ugly. It's impossible to forgive.
Bullshit. Bullshit. They slaughtered so many people in the 2014 or whatever, the last cutting of the grass, mowing of the lawn bullshit. And before that, just look at Lebanon, how they just murdered so many, and even on the under the nose of the UN forces there, and look at Haiti, and look at freaking Cambodia, and he says elite. And yes, it's word porn. It's a hagiography of Israel. He's just, oh, they can totally get away, and now they are the elite. They've entered an elite club, and it's like that. You're not actually saying what you're saying. It's a strategic win, basically. He's saying the opposite.
Cannot be justified, nor can be put in context. Liberal Zionism has become a contradiction in terms. The Jewish state has quickly become synonymous with Jewish supremacism, the natural heir to white supremacists. They have totally dehumanized the population of Gaza, killed them with contempt.
But you're not coming out and saying the elephant in the room. These are not Jews, they're European Jews. They are European white. They look white. They don't look Arabic, right? Why do the fascists in Europe love Israel? Because they're killing Arabs, right? It's a marriage of convenience, and this guy is just like, you know, it's like, what the fuck, you know? It's like, it's a forever war. I don't understand this guy's. How is it this is a strategic defeat? Yes, the protests are going on, but the U.S. has always supported them, and until it doesn't, why do you think it's like I am the voice of conscience? No, you're not. You're just word porn and worshiping Israel and the U.S.
in their eyes. This is having a transformational effect on Jewry worldwide, in whose name these crimes are being committed. You can see it in the words of Jonathan Glazer, the British director of the film Zone of Interest, when he said in his Oscar acceptance speech,
"Right now we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people."
Emily, a Jewish activist member of Naamod UK.
Wait for it. The problem with the way that's framed, he doesn't explain that. He doesn't explain that the Jewish people, that Jewish director is saying, I renounce Israel as a Jew. What they're doing, as a Jew, I'm horrified about what the Jewish people are being blamed for. I disavow, I condemn Israel, basically. But this guy's not saying that. He is going to back up a claim by the far right that this guy was a self-hating Jew. You know, he's not a self-hating Jew, right? So I'm worried that these little snippets are going to be, oh, there's just self-hating Jews. Ugh, they're just doing themselves in.
Said, I think there's been a quiet reckoning in our community, and you can see this because the bloc keeps growing, the movement keeps growing, the constituency organisations keep getting bigger and bigger. I've never been so sure that I will see a free Palestine.
I believe it is my solemn duty, not just as a Jew but as a human being, to stand here and demand for an immediate ceasefire, and to show that these marches aren't an unsafe place for Jews. There are hundreds of us here today in solidarity with Palestinians.
Asked what she thought of her government's attempt to brand these marches as the work of extremists, she said, I'm very tired of being told how to feel as a Jewish person by people who are not.
Feel? Why is he quoting that? He'll stop at that, won't he? And look, Jewish socialist. It's just the underlying bigotry. Look, Judaic Bolshevism, that's what the right sees. Self-hating Jew.
Jewish. I'm tired of being told to feel afraid when these marches are, by and large, peaceful and people are so lovely to us and so thankful to us. It really shows the ignorance of Jewish opinion outside their very small Zionist rabble. Israel and its apologists are right to be scared.
What the hell was that?
People are so lovely to us and so thankful to us. It really shows the ignorance of Jewish opinion outside their very small Zionist rabble.
Here's the thing. Why did he say that in the way? Why doesn't he explain what's being said? Because that's a very weird way of speaking. And he could have massaged that quote with, he could have made sure that quote is understandable outside of, you don't close out your argument with Jewish socialism in your, what the fuck?
Israel and its apologists are right to be scared of what
a self-hating Jew, Israel is right. What the do you know that, you're getting it, right?
a new generation of American and British Jew is telling them. For the last 8 decades, Israel governed a consensus about its existence, identity and purpose, which was much more powerful than all the arms, money and the migrants the state received. The weaker this consensus becomes, the quicker Israel will lose its influence in the centers of Western power.
Bullshit. What?
Received. The weaker this consensus.
What consensus? What are you talking about?
What a new generation of American and British Jew is telling them. For the last 8 decades, Israel governed a consensus.
Israel governed a consensus? How is that not Judaic Bolshevik conspiracy laden? Israel's pulling the strings. No, freaking U.S. has propped these guys up just like they did the Suharto regime. Well, what the fuck, right? It's like, holy Jesus Christ.
About its existence, identity and purpose, which is much more powerful than all the arms, money and the migrants the state.
Yeah, it's much more powerful than the U.S. US's money, arms, and all the U.S. settlers that come to the state. What are you're saying that yes, it's a powerful conspiracy. It's beyond just the arms. What the fuck? It's just so ridiculous.
Received. The weaker this consensus becomes, the quicker Israel will lose its influence in the centers of Western.
What? It's like you're talking about the tail wagging the dog, and you're not talking about the U.S. at all. How U.S. is absolutely not only complicit, but the main actor in propping up the cop on the beat in the U.S. Cop on the beat in the Middle East.
Power. Already, the compulsive addiction of support for Israel is upending the West's own attempts to explain to itself that it is a moral force, a force for good in the world. Under the British government's latest definition of extremism, it is...
Oh, right. Of course, this is the Democratic Party's official line, isn't it? That we're the moral force. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I mean, you have destabilized Chile, the first 9/11. You have destabilized Cambodia and Vietnam and the Philippines and Indonesia and everywhere frickin' else. And you still claim to be the most moral people in the world because we're just so liberal and they hate our freedoms. And it's like, what the fuck? This is ripping off the mask that is both Israel and the US and the Western powers. It's ripping the mask, the nice, polite mask. See, Trump, this is why I like Trump, because he showed us that the iron fist under the velvet glove, the other politer politicians had. You had George Bush, the second one, the oh gee herp herp oh gee oh shucks folks kind of thing, and then before him Reagan, you know, the Teflon Don, the oh I'm just an actor, oh, you know. And this stuff is just, it's gotten more blatant, and Trump showed us the real face of it. He helped show us how brutal and unfair the US is, right? And how it can't help not be the way it is, right? But that doesn't mean it's good. And this guy is just, oh yeah, Israel will be defamed. No, the entire world knows that it's the US reputation that is being tattered here. Not this guy's trying to say, oh, it's only Israel who's going to get blamed for this. No, it's freaking the British government, the French government, anybody who's supporting, who's not recognizing the Palestinian state is absolutely complicit in propping up Israel. So it's not like, oh, well, yeah, so Israel faces... No, you were talking wrong if the only way to do this is fix this guy's title. Why the Western powers face a strategic defeat in Gaza, right? And he's like, oh, it's just Israel and our goodness because we're good. And it's like, now he's a pariah. But the US is going to be a pariah state by the end of this, period. It absolutely will be. And it's going to be a not a milestone, but not a threshold, a turning point, basically, in democracy, because democracy is under threat everywhere. So this guy, of course, he'd be absolutely happy to go along with anything as long as they have a liberal side of it, and he knows that liberals are needed by the governments to assuage the anger of the populace. So it's just, Jesus, this is how not to do liberal democracy social videos. This is how to blame a scapegoat. Yeah, and he's not really, is he? It's just word porn.
Somehow within British values to support a government that flouts the Genocide Convention, starves the population under occupation.
Really? He's saying British values. Mr. Irish much? Hello? There's still simmering resentment in Ireland. You guys were you were doing that. Look at India. What the fuck? You know, it's like British values. It's like, lol. Are these people completely brain dead? I think they are. I think they've drunk their own Kool-Aid.
And kills unarmed mothers and children at will. But it is extremist to protest against that on the streets of London. This is a patent absurdity. It is left to the likes of South Africa to show Britain the way. It is now going to prosecute its citizens who return.
Show Britain the way? What have they done? Britain routinely condemns the ICG and ICC right along with the US. Showing what way?
Having fought in the Israeli army. Add to this,
What?
The way. It is now going to prosecute its citizens who return having fought in the Israeli army.
Who said that? What? Talk about victimhood? Well, who said, you know? What? Why is this about, is this what you think the strategic defeat in Gaza is? the ICJ going after the foot soldiers?
Add to this Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's profound reluctance to conduct a prisoner exchange, which his own negotiators agreed at.
It's not prisoner exchange, you idiot. It's a hostage exchange, because Netanyahu's IDF has thousands of freaking hostages. Call it what it is.
At the Paris talks, and the continuing daily carnage of Gaza is having a profound effect on those who supported and continue to arm Israel.
No, it's not. It's not even touching it. The protests are having a profound effect because they're not shutting up. And this guy is like, oh, it's just going to naturally happen. It's like, what the it's not the media, it's the protests that are bringing to light this stuff, and the internet, social media. It's not. He's acting like he's speaking for the Western press and, you know, our democratic values of freedom and freedom of the press and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, what the fuck? It's just, this is showing the corporate underbelly, the nasty corporate underbelly, the fascistic shadow cast by the corporations. And this guy's like, oh, it's just going to naturally happen.
Joe Biden's rift with Netanyahu is now open.
No, it's not. It's always been open and in the public. It's a dance. They're still feeding them arms and bullets and bombs. What do you mean, feud? Oh, they're concerned. It's like, oh, come on. And Biden has been doing this dance with Netanyahu since Biden was in frickin' Parliament. I mean, sorry, in Congress, you know, or the Senate or wherever he was. You know, it's just like, holy, isn't it like two houses of Congress? I guess if you say Congress, you mean Senate and the House of Representatives. Whatever, right? I literally do not care. It's like, I'm so angry with that political system. Yeah, and their fucking college crap.
Public. The US leader who said so loudly that Israel...
What? Yes, he does. He says so loudly and then goes, oh, I'm just kind of concerned. It's like bullshit.
...had every right to defend itself 5 months ago, now says Israel cannot kill another 30,000 Palestinians.
Oh no, it cannot kill it. It's saying cannot. It's making it. You're given a number. In a year at election time, it's going to be 60,000. That's what I just said, right? And this guy's just. It's a soundbite to him, a meaningless soundbite of why would they mention a number? Oh, it can't possibly be another. Oh, 90,000. Oh, 120,000. You know, it's just kicking that can down the road.
In the name of self-defense.
Oh, red line.
I don't, for one, believe Biden has had some dramatic change of heart, or that the scales have fallen from his eyes. If Biden is confronting the consequences of having given Israel the brightest of green lights to invade Gaza after the Hamas attack on October the 7th, those consequences are primarily
electoral. Oh, yes. It's the concern is just the vote. No, the concern is the freaking protests that are continuing and bringing to light the frustration of people against the government, which is scary as hell to the rich and powerful. That's all that freaking matters. It's the protests that are scaring the corporations because it's democracy, and corporations by nature are scared of democracy.
Biden's team has been shocked by the extent of the uncommitted vote.
That was just a protest about a primary, voting in the primaries for who's going to be the primary, and there was only one vote. No, there was no contender. Like, it should have been, where is Bernie Sanders? Why wasn't it Bernie Sanders? You know, right? Because that's not an option. It's unthinkable. They don't want to do that again, right? And I'm sure Bernie doesn't want to do that again. But he was, you know, he's just a cheerleader. He just gets up in front and says what all the protesters are saying, but he's acts like he's going to empower it, but he's not. He's disempowering it by talking about it. And this guy is disempowering by trying to... This video is not disempowering Israel. He's disempowering the protests by talking about, oh yes, hundreds of thousands of voters, blah, 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 blah. Hundreds of thousands of voters. Let's see, hundreds of thousands versus 100 of millions of actual people in the US. So what does this guy care and his backers care about 0.1%?
Hundreds of thousands of voters across the US voted for no candidate in the Democratic primaries on Super Tuesday.
Yep, Democrat, that's... Yeah, and guess what frickin' happened to Bernie Sanders? Idiot. It's frickin' meaningless. There was no option other than Biden. You dumbass.
Tuesday, as the movement urging voters to vote uncommitted gathers pace in protest at Biden's handling of the war in Gaza. There is now a deliberate shift in tone. The Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer...
No, it's not. While Schumer was funding... Schumer will fund Israel, Biden will do the, oh, we're concerned. And when Schumer is criticizing Israel, Biden is... it's a two... There's takes... Might say two to tango, but this is a menage a frickin' trois between Schumer, Biden, and Netanyahu. It's a dance they've all done for decades. Hello?
Highest-ranking Jewish official in the US was full-throated in his support for Israel after the Hamas attack. Last week he said support for Israel worldwide was at a historic low and that Israel could not survive if...
Yes, I remember that. But it was, Biden was then the one to support. You know, it's just a, and it's like, what the hell?
It became a pariah state. The loss of public opinion.
And next week, Schumer will say the opposite.
In the West. The
And then
continued
Biden
case in the International Court of Justice for genocide.
charades.
The erosion of the Jewish consensus. And the nervousness of Israel's back.
What?
Court of Justice for genocide. The erosion of the Jewish consensus. And the nervous...
Jewish conspiracy. It's not... It's... Consensus, it's like, Jesus Christ, you just said they were governing the consensus. But they don't. You're saying literally that the tail is wagging the dog. And this is full-on democratic, anti-Semitic bullshit. And it's not helping. And it's obviously not as Israel... What do you mean? You've shown us nothing. You've tried to waylay the concerns of protesters and say, oh, it's just going to devolve down to a vote. That's not what the corporations are worried about.
Of Israel's backers. All this points to a strategic defeat for Israel. Even if the war stops now, the price Israel has paid for the reoccupation of Gaza would have been higher than it could possibly have imagined.
And the dramatic frickin' music. The dramatic frickin'... Has he been playing dramatic music the entire bloody time?
In October last year, the Israeli army...
Oh my God, he has. This is hilarious. This is exactly what the right do. They have this bullshit bullshit anti-Semitic argument and fill it with and I just literally talk about this, and fills it with dramatic music and gives right away they come up with the Jewish conspiracy thing, and then you're expected to assume that you get bored and stop watching and that everything is backing up this accusation, but he's not. He just like constant self-hating Jews, the Jewish Bolshevism, they're wagging the dog, they're wagging the dog, they're wagging the dog. Vote, not protest. There's no word of protest. There's no explanation of these are not self-hating Jews. They are speaking. It's nothing. This guy's an idiot. Why am I even watching this crap? Good frickin' bye. Frick. Right? It's like, I just wasted my time. There was nothing to learn from that utter bovine fecal matter. Holy crap.